Yeah, hello, everyone. The wonders of video sermoning. I forgot to press the record button. So here we go with version 2 of the same sermon for today. Today, we hear from the church what the church calls the Great Commission. Jesus in Matthew charges his disciples to go out and baptize. And he says to baptize using the Trinitarian formula and to teach the people the things that he taught them. Now, this is interesting for several reasons. Notably, that the Trinitarian notion wasn't conceived of for centuries after this particular occurrence happened. And it's interesting, too, to note that this is the last several verses at the very end of Matthew. In addition, Matthew places this final interaction with Jesus and his disciples in Galilee, while Mark places this interaction both at the end of his gospel and in the first chapters of Acts during the ascension as happening just outside of Jerusalem. So Matthew, though, was primarily focused on what it meant to be church. And Jesus giving his Great Commission was about founding the church. So the last thing we're left with is Jesus founding the church, and Matthew being a church-oriented gospel, the community-oriented gospel, and Jesus setting that tone, and he set a tone that set Christianity apart from the other religions of his day in a very significant way, and that was the way of evangelism. For Christians were tasked with spreading the faith. Unlike others of his time, other religions of his time, while they were willing to accept converts, didn't go out and actively pursue them. This gospel focuses upon the act of baptism, and we Episcopalians have used that as a foundational focus for our denomination, the baptismal covenant. This covenant has come into particular focus given the events nationally in the past several days. We profess, as part of our baptismal covenant, to strive for justice and peace among all people and to respect the dignity of every human being, not just the ones who look like us or act like us or vote like us. And in doing this, we have found at times that we are at odds with the powers that govern our communities. When striving at times means putting our principles before the personalities that we interact with and calling out those who do not revere through their actions or words the teachings of Jesus. It may also mean that we need to point out what the Gospels actually say. That you cannot serve two masters. That the commandments taught by Jesus are to love God and your fellows. He never said to love the state. Never said love Rome or even love Israel. Never said love Caesar. Love your clan or your tribe above all others is not, I repeat, is not in the scriptures. He didn't even tell his disciples to insist that others believe as they did. No, he says offer them the gospel, and if they don't accept it, move on. Don't make an idol of the law of Moses, he shows in word and deed, or even the scriptures themselves, but live by the truth contained within them. This is what he teaches. These are the principles upon which our baptismal covenant is based. And following it, when it's easy, is not the issue. Following it when it's hard is the whole trick. For loving your friends, being in community with those you like, is not what separates us and designates us as disciples of Jesus. Doing it when it's hard, that's the rub. And man, is it hard now. for a variety of reasons. And one of which we can't gather in person. Another is that people who we charge and pay to protect us injure the least of society, and then oftentimes aren't held to account. The dignity of all people, not just those like us, is trampled under the boot and the knee. And when we stand with the voiceless, we are pilloried by those who seek to keep the oppressed silent. Yet this is the very time to stand up. Jesus brought a radical message. He wasn't about restoring the prestige of the state or a religion. He was about proclaiming God's love is at hand. And for that, he was lawfully executed. We know he was innocent, not guilty of any real crimes, yet he was lawfully executed by the religious and political systems of his time. So with God's help, which is what we ask for in our baptismal covenant, let us bear witness when the innocent are murdered. Bear witness to the oppressed and those who cannot advocate for themselves. Bear witness to the one commandment that the person that we follow proclaimed: love. Because we need this love. Because none of us is alone in this. In fact, in Genesis, we hear the story of creation, and that doesn't happen in isolation either. The spiritual story of how we came to be who and what we are. Listen to the story, this first creation story. Hear God speak and wonder. To whom? God, even in the very beginning, is in relationship with all of creation. God is in communion with creation. Let us, he says, let us make humans in our image. Not meaning that they will look like us. Images are transitory. Let us create humankind with a consciousness, with a capacity to love, a capacity to create, to wonder, an ability to be merciful and compassionate. So God created male and female in this first version of Scripture, equal in this first version of Scripture. And we who have been created, us, through our wisdom and skill, achieve dominion over creation. We aren't the strongest or the fastest. We don't live the longest or see or hear the best. But we learn, and we learned, and we grew in wisdom. Still, we are limited. Blessed, but not the purveyor of blessings. And often we elevate ourselves in importance and forget that we aren't the source of life. We dominate rather than exhibit our dominion. We subjugate rather than elevate our environment. We cut off our noses to spite our faces because of our arrogance, and forget, as Paul taught, that love is not arrogant. When we act in this manner, as an image of God intended, we act as outlined in this story of creation, then it is good. It is very good. When one is elevated All are elevated when it's done with love. The rising tide raises all boats if we have the wisdom to fix the leaky ones before the tide comes in. If we repair the boats of the poor before the storm. That's what love does. It does not think to itself first and foremost. That is the image of God. If God was only thinking of himself, we wouldn't be here. God will not bludgeon us or you with the Bible or any scriptures. Will not hold it up in the air and shake it at you. Will not elevate the icon over the thing that it represents. We people do that. That's on us. But we are made in God's image, in God's capacity. We mirror God's capacity for wisdom. We mirror God's capacity for mercy and compassion. Let's show it to ourselves. Learn from our shortcomings and grow into the light of the Spirit. And remember, Peter denied Christ 3 times. Yet he learned and taught the truth of Christ in the end. He thought, and all the disciples thought, that Jesus was supposed to be king among men. We even proclaim Christ as king, trying to elevate him to what an earthly king might be. But he and we have learned that he is the way to know God. Through Jesus, we come to know God. Let us remember that the one in whose name we gather and the path that he walked in is what we're being asked to evangelize. That's our Great Commission. That's the reason we baptize in his name, so that we might remember who we are as followers of Jesus.